like you to read it carefully, or at least like glance through, and tell me, while I will do some introductory stuff, tell me few oddities that you see in the text. In the sense that there are at least 2 or 3 things that when you read the text, you kind of like your eyebrow should go up. It's like, that's kind of weird. Why is that? So please read and see if anything will strike the nerve. But while you're reading, so the book of Revelation, as you know, we can have, modern scholarship developed 4 main ways to read the book of Revelation. One of them is when all of that is still way, way, way ahead of us. And those people usually are looking for great tribulation and for afflictions of Christians. And that's partially true. The best way to read the book of Revelation this way is to remember all the awful movies you've seen from Hollywood, like Terminator, where with robot uprising or with people fighting with people, the Mars attacks, something like that. Then you close your eyes, then you read the book of Revelation, and that's what you see here. Okay? That's one of the ideas. Another idea, and actually Dr. Martin Luther read it this way, is try to line up, beginning with chapter 1, with the appearance of Jesus. Okay, so when Jesus appears, that's obviously the 1st century AD. Okay, so with appearance of Jesus toward the end, and we understand that the Revelation 22 is probably this eschatological, this fancy word means teaching about last days. Okay, eschaton is the last, okay, in Greek. So from Revelation 1, which is 1st century AD, to something in the, let's say, this fulfillment of the day of the Lord. When he comes in his full glory, people try to line up the different stages in history. Right now, Lutheran Church does not read Revelation this way. As far as I know, the only church organization that still does, is Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so they believe that the main kind of calamity, main crush, or not the crush, the main
Apocalypse.
what?
Apocalypse.
The main fight that happens between forces of good and evil is the fight of like 17th and 18th and 19th chapter. That's not actually 19th, 17th and 18th chapter. That's where they live right now. Okay, that happens now. And actually, that's the whole problem with this kind of attitude. Because Luther, who lived 500 years ago, believed the same. He believed that he lives in chapter 17 and 18. So what does it tell you?
Going on.
What it tells you is exactly what it tells you, that to read Revelation this way, you always need to stretch the timeline, because most likely you believe that this is the worst can ever be. Okay. Especially here in California, I mean, we are very happy to live in California, especially on the Central Coast, not like those places like in Bakersfield. And, I understand those people who come from Bakersfield here. I do not understand those people who come from here to there. But that's my humble opinion, whatever. Take it as it's worth. And you have to be twice as godly to live here, seriously. Or in Arizona, with their 120 Fahrenheit in the summer, it's kind of scary. I mean, just think about that, scary. So my point is, we live here. It's a beautiful weather, but the climate, spiritual climate we live in, obviously desires to be better. But on the other hand, if you not listen to some people from, who broadcast from Center of Non-Real News, but if you really read statistics, what you will see is there is actually decline of crime, it is safer, and it is less poverty nationwide than compared, let's say, 200 years ago. So it is not as bad in some social level, yet we still have our spiritual challenges. So my point is, we tend to believe that the troubles we are in is the worst troubles at all. Okay? Especially those who live in U.S., and especially those who live in California, and especially those who never left California or the U.S. I would just suggest one simple thing. You might want to travel.
Join the service.
Nah, that's kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that far. Just to realize how blessed we are here, with what gifts we have here, just travel. Even like 5.5-hour drive down there, down to Mexico, you cross the border, and as soon as you leave tourist region of, what's the city there? Tijuana, thank you. Next to San Diego. If you go there, first of all, be careful. Okay? You might want to just zip your pocket, just saw your pockets like really hard. It's one thing. Secondly, it is there. And if you go a little bit down country land, you'll see. You can see the difference. And if you travel to Africa or South America or other parts of the world or Southeast Asia, we are still very blessed to be here. So that's the second one, historical reading. Third reading, so the first one is like futurist, everything is in the future. Second one is historical reading. When you try to map out the history of the world as we know it with whatever we see in Revelation. The third one can be called idealistic, which means that this is an ideal, not in the sense of perfect situation, but this is an ideal explanation of what's going on at all times and in all places. There is always fight between good and evil. And sometimes it is reflected in sicknesses. Sometimes it is reflected in the nature disasters. Sometimes it is reflected in, some deaths. Sometimes it is reflected in uprise of sinful behavior, or so on and so forth. So the whole book can and should be, from that point of view, be seen as the thing that can give us an answer to our today problems, because we always have that. We always have, on one hand, we have a church militant who fights, and we will see that in Revelation 7. Or we have church of martyrs and struggling, the one whose saints, whose members are under the altar. And they are suffering, and they are slain, and they are part of this great tribulation. On the other hand, simultaneously with that, we always see church victorious, the one who celebrates the marriage feast of the Lamb, as we do in our every communion service. So that's the third one. And there is a fourth one. The fourth one is the scholarly name, it's preterist name, so it's basically about the past. Those people believe that most of this has been fulfilled. And we live basically within the realm of God's reign and Jesus' reign, and we transform the world and prepare for his final judgment. So basically we live in chapters 21 and 22. Okay? And everything else has been fulfilled before 70 AD. That's why when you read book of Revelation from the very beginning, what it says here is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which is given to him for all the servants. The verse 3, blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear, who keep what is written in it, for the time is near. And they believe that the near does not mean like a theological near, that it's always somewhere near, but it was really for those guys in year 60 AD, and the time for them was near. They went through tribulations. They were expelled, they were excluded from the synagogues, from the fellowship of believers, because they confessed that Jesus, the Messiah, has come. So those who did not want to submit to his rules were ruling in most of the places, and that's why John, being the one who confesses Jesus as the Messiah, as Christ, ended up being sentenced to Patmos. Okay, so that's basically as I said, the whole book of Revelation up to chapter 21 has been fulfilled back in 70 AD. What I would say is, every view actually has its own some strengths and weaknesses. The most important point is, whatever approach you will take, and there's four of them, means what? If you take, let's say, first one, you disagree with second, third, and fourth. Whatever approach you take, you are a minority. Sorry, guys. So, roughly 75%, as I said, historical approach is not really common, not as common as it used to be before, but all the other ones are pretty common. And there are some churches and groups that dominate one way or another. Just to give you a hint, Louis Bryden, who wrote the commentary for Concordia Publishing House in the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod, he kind of holds toward idealistic view. And then there are other professors who say, not really. It's probably more, we need to see it in a historical setting that all of those things, or many of these things, have been fulfilled in the first century AD. So, just an introduction. Now, while I was speaking, you were supposed to read. Yeah. Any odd things that you found?
I can't read what people are talking about.
How can you teach?
I need silence.
So you get them in silence and then you read?
Well, we
read you're a student.
Together.
Okay.
And then if they read on their own, then it's...
Okay. Okay. Fine.
And same with writing. You can't write while there's noise. Some people can.
I don't know. Okay. That's... I turn the music. Okay. Any ideas? Just glance it through.
So there's always been the argument. I guess if you look at it that way, right? There was a number that was in the Word of God, 44,000. And through history, right, that number has always been argued that there's only going to be 144,000 people saved. And
okay.
As a Christian, you have to
So
understand what that means.
144,000. Yes, that's an important thing. Like, what is that? And we do understand where the number 144 comes from. We understand that this is what we have from verses 2 to 8, I guess. Yes, that's the 12 tribes by 12,000 each. So the question is this 12,000 in each of the tribe, is this symbolic or real? Or, symbolic can be real too, but, is that the real number of believers within the tribe, or this is just more general to say the fullness of the tribe is here? Okay? For example, if you have ever been approached by the guys who will tell you how great the earth will be after second coming of Christ, and their acronym stands for J and W, for Jehovah's Witnesses, they do believe that this is a real number. Okay? They believe that the heavenly church already has filled the quote. That's it. That's why, first of all, when they celebrate, it's even hard to say, when they celebrate the Lord's Supper, it's not the way we do it, but however they do it once a year on Monday, Thursday. So when Jesus instituted, that's only once a year. But even in the whole of the kingdom, that's how they call the buildings, in the whole of the kingdom, it is offered, but nobody touches that because it's only for those 144,000. And since 144,000 is already built, it is offered, but since people on earth are not part of that, they kind of restrain themselves from that. Okay? It is important to notice that 144 and 12,000, I believe, have more a symbolic value. Because to understand Revelation 7, we actually need to go back to the book of Numbers. We are not going to jump there right now. Chapters 1 and 2. And what we see in the book of Numbers is, so, as you know, you probably all know by heart, we have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and then we have Numbers, okay? What happens in the book of Leviticus? In the very book of, scratch it. What happens at the very end of the book of Exodus? The glory of the Lord fills the tabernacle. And then we see that parallel with that, first 7 chapters of Exodus are paralleled with 2 last chapters of Exodus. So in chapters 8, 9, and 10, we see the installation of the priesthood, Aaron and his sons, who will serve in the tabernacle. So, glory of the Lord fills the tabernacle. We have the priests. Now we can organize the camp. And how are we going to organize the camp? Okay, this is not a square. Sorry, guys. We had a wedding yesterday, so my handwriting is not as straight.
What does that mean?
It's something like that. So this is Holy of Holies. This is Holy Place. This is the court, okay, of the tabernacle. And then we have 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? All over this. And then actually, which is very important for our text, is unnumbered multitude of believers. Okay? Those who are not Israelites, but who left Egypt because they realized that God of those Israelites is kind of big and strong. And I'm not sure that we can really relate to him, but at least he protects his own. So if we're going to cling to these guys as close as possible, there is a chance that we will be safe. Because if we're going to stay back in Egypt, we definitely are really doomed. So it's not a good place. So we have 12 tribes, and the setting is in Numbers 1 and 2. If you want to go back and reread it and memorize the numbers for each tribe, great. That's a great exercise. And the coolest exercise is actually some of the numbers are significant. For example, in the numbers for the tribe of Benjamin, we have a very interesting thing, very interesting figure. The number of people in the tribe of Benjamin that we find in the, I think it's chapter 1, and I did a stupid thing, I closed my glasses. The number of people in the tribe of Benjamin is, yes, it's 1, and it should be toward the end somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Verse 36 and 37. So, how many people we have in the tribe of Benjamin?
35,400.
Okay, 35,400. Okay? That's funny. Because if we get rid of those 2 zeros, we have 354. That's the number of lunar days. That's the number of days in the lunar year. You know, the moon is going with its own cycles. It's roughly 29 and a half days in the moon cycle every month. So in 354 days, moon will be at the very same place where you're going to see. So if you're going to mark it today where the moon will be, in 354 days, it's going to be in the same place wherever you observe it. Okay? So what does it give to us? What it gives to us, actually, without going into too much details, is God has promised to Abraham that his kids, his children, his descendants would be like stars on the sky. So they will rule the world like stars. And it's very interesting. What tribe do we get our first king from? Benjamin. Saul was a Benjamin. Okay? But he's not that sun type of ruler. He is a moon type of ruler. Therefore, he has no dynasty. That's why we need to come up with Judah, and he rules, and now we have a descendant from Judah. And it's very interesting, but the descendant of Judah in the book of Malachi, okay? In the book of Malachi, in chapter 4, is compared to what? Here comes what? The sun, S-U-N, and healing in his wings. So we have the one who is like a bright and shining star and sun. Okay? So we have the numbers, and they are different from tribe to tribe. The most important thing that we need to draw from here, when we come to Revelation, first of all, we need to remember this structure of the arrangement of the camp from Numbers, but when we see those perfect numbers of 12,000 and 12 by 12 is brought together into 144, we need to understand this is somewhat symbolic. Okay? So this is somewhat oddity number one. Anything else? Did you find anything else? Yes?
Yeah, but this number means equity between tribes.
Exactly.
Everybody is equal.
Yes. Good point. Yes. Because here we can see if you will spend, let's say, half an hour and lay out those numbers, you will see that some tribes are bigger and they are kind of in charge of the three tribes on each side. So there is Reuben, there is Judah, and so on and so forth. There are like leading tribes, yes. But here, as Olga pointed out, it's all equal. Okay, one more important thing. In chapter 7, we first have a list of 12 tribes, which adds up to 144. Then what do we have? Then, beginning with verse 9, we actually come to a very important thing. And after this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all the tribes, peoples, and languages, standing before the throne. So what John picks up, or what he helps us to understand, that the church that was arranged in Revelation around, not around the Holy of Holies, but around the throne of God that we have as now, is we have Israelites and we have unnumbered people from all nations. What words do we have here? Yes. All nations, tribes, peoples, and languages. Okay? So, all of that is to tell us that we can do the work of outreach and evangelism as long as we still have people who do not know Jesus. And they are welcomed into this group. Right now, we have people from all the countries, but not from all the languages. And mission groups who do translation of the Bible, and actually Lutheran Bible Translators is one of the most efficient ones, along with United Bible Societies and Wycliffe translators, are doing a great job. And they recently set up the goal that by 1230 they will have either all languages covered, or like 99% languages would be covered, and they would have their own, they would have the Word of God in their own language. Okay? So that's kind of very important thing. But unlike in Numbers, we do not really have any kind of borderline between. So we have something structured around the presence of God, and then unnumbered group of folks who worship God. And actually, it's from their lips we see the praise. Let's look at these praises. One of them is we find in verse 10. We are back in Revelation chapter 7. So verse 10. They are crying with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and the Lamb. Okay? If you remember, the way I described the camp in Numbers is the guys who kind of left Egypt with Israelites were not really claiming that this is their God. In New Testament, in Revelation, what we see, it's those guys who say salvation belongs to our God. It's their confession. The biblical God is their God. It's our God. Okay? So this is important that these two natures, I would even say, of the church, somewhat ordered and somewhat disordered, always present. We always have in our church some kind of order, and then we have some challenges. But regardless of that, everybody who are around the throne, they do worship the same God, and they claim that it's their God. And at the very end of the chapter, what we see here is actually, then one of the elders addressed me saying, who are these? And he says, sir, you know. And he says, these are the ones that coming of the great tribulation, they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. For they shall hunger no more, neither thirst nor more. The sun will not strike them, not any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne, and he will be their shepherd and will guide them to the springs of water. Okay? And then very interesting phrase, and I love this phrase dearly. And God will wipe away their tears. And we've talked about that. I mean, however symbolic you want to take it, every symbol behind itself has a reality. Otherwise, symbol doesn't make any sense. I mean, when we read in Psalm 1 that the godly person is like a tree, we do by no means we want to take him that he actually is woody. I mean, he's like a Pinocchio. No, not in that sense. But what we see is he is rooted in life. He has a strong life perception and skills with like kind of his trunks. And he has, branches with his fruit. So he is reaching out to other people and he's fruitful in his life. So same thing here. Again, however allegorically you want to say it, but to be able to wipe away tears of those who suffered, that means God has to be very close to the person who is shedding tears. All of us, wherever we are, in 12 tribes or in a unnumbered, group, with that great mystery. It looks, from geographical perspective, it's such a huge group of people, you can't end up in the back row, Like you want to see Dodgers and you are still goodness knows there, you cannot see anything, no fun whatsoever. But it's not that way, yeah, and binoculars might help you, but not really. But my point is, it's not about geography. At the same time, in his mystic way, God will be very close to every one of us. And if we will have shed any tears, he will wipe them. But to wipe away a tear, you have to be at the hand's reach. So close. This is awesome. I like it. There is one more thing. If we'll go into list of tribes, if you want to go home, and I will give you two passages for the homework. One of them, both of them are in Genesis. One of them is in Genesis 29 and 30. That's where Rachel and Leah had a birth race. Okay, they were racing who will give more kids and whatever. Or Rachel was trying to give a kid, at least one. you know, and it's very funny, you know, Bible from the very beginning says, you know, Jacob loved Rachel, period, nothing else. The only conversation that we have between Rachel and Jacob is when she complains, if you will not give me a child, I will die. And he so lovingly responds, am I God to give you a child? Like, what's your problem? You know, very loving, you know, so sweethearts. But seriously speaking, so if you read this, you know, and how Rachel used her servant, to get at least some kind of half child, whatever. That's sad, funny simultaneously, you know. It's like a melodramatic sitcom, you know. You can read that back home. But there is also one more place in chapter 49. Jacob blesses all his sons. So when you will compare the names here, and they match with what we have over there, we will miss one. We will miss Dan. Okay? The tribe of Dan is not listed in Revelation chapter 7. And then the question is, why? And the answer, the closest answer I was ever able to come up with, or I didn't even come up with that. Let's put it this way. The closest answer I think is, or the answer I found which is closer to the truth or reality, what it can be, is we need to go back to the book of Judges. Oops. To chapters 17 and 18. Yes, what?
Also Ephraim, correct my pronunciation. Ephraim is substituted with Joseph.
Yeah, he's Joseph. That's kind of obvious, you know. Yeah, there is no Ephraim, but his son, his second son, who became the heir of Ephraim, is there. So, but Dan is gone. Whatever. I mean, fully, he is really gone. What happens in Judges 17:18? It's a very sad story where the guys from tribe of Dan, after they settled in the land, decided that the land is not good enough for them. So they stole an idol. They invited a defrogged Levite, defrogged priest, who kind of left the congregation that he used to serve and decided to do some kind of business out of spirituality. So they picked him up as their main spiritual leader. And so they took this idol, they took this priest, and they went up north to the place where a peaceful tribe used to live, and they conquered them. In a sense, they wiped them off. They just wiped them, they killed them, which is not good by no means. The Bible does not justify every war. God did not ask them to do that. He did not appoint them to be in this time and place in the holy. He did not ask them to be engaged in the holy war activities. So basically, after Judges 17 and 18, we kind of do not really hear anything about tribe of Dan. So they slowly but surely they fade away, and since they broke away from the community of believers and engaged themselves into very weird self-promoting activities, they are gone. So that's again, that's the closest understanding I have ever had. Okay, that's basically all I wanted to say about Revelation chapter 7. Questions or comments?